The sound of small fists cutting through air shouldn't have stopped Dae-Sung-han in his tracks. As one of Los Angeles' most feared Korean mafia bosses, he'd heard every kind of violence imaginable. But this was different. This was his 7-year-old son, Min-jun, who hadn't spoken more than whispered words since masked intruders shattered their world 6 months ago. Dae-Sung approached the courtyard doorway, expecting to find his son alone with his puzzles as usual. Instead, he found something impossible. Min-jun in a perfect horse stance, tiny fists positioned with precision, following the gentle guidance of their new black maid, Ariel Monroe. Hana, set. She counted softly in Korean, her own stance flawless, her movements flowing like water. Min-jun's face held an expression Dae-Sung hadn't seen in months, concentration without fear, determination without trembling. The boy who flinched at footsteps was now grounding his feet with purpose. Dae-Sung's breath caught in his throat. His empire was built on control, but watching his broken son find strength in the hands of a woman he'd hired to clean his house, he felt completely powerless, and for the first time in years, that didn't terrify him. It gave him hope. Welcome to Korean Mafia Lovers. Hello everyone. Please drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential for us to continue bringing you these incredible stories. Ariel Monroe adjusted her Navy uniform one final time before stepping through the imposing gates of the Han estate. The mansion loomed before her like something from a movie, all marble columns and mirrored windows that seemed to watch her every move. She'd cleaned plenty of wealthy homes in Atlanta, but nothing quite like this fortress of glass and stone, perched high in the Hollywood Hills. The job posting had been simple. Housekeeper needed for private residence, discretion required. Excellent compensation. What it hadn't mentioned was that the house felt more like a mausoleum than a home, or that the man who owned it carried himself like he could command armies with a single glance. Dae-Sung-han was devastatingly handsome in the way that made smart women stupid. Sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, and an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the lean muscle underneath. But it was the way everyone else in the house moved around him, careful, deferential, almost fearful, that told Ariel exactly what kind of man she was working for. "Miss Monroe," he said when they met in his office, his English perfect but accented. "Your references are impressive. Tell me, what brings you to Los Angeles?" Ariel kept her voice steady. "Fresh start, Mr. Han. Sometimes a change of scenery helps you find what you're looking for." Something flickered in his eyes, understanding maybe. "Indeed. You'll be working primarily on the main floor and guest quarters. My son." He paused, and for just a moment the commanding mask slipped. "My son prefers quiet. Please respect that." Of course. What he didn't tell her was that his son barely existed at all. Ariel discovered this on her second day, when she glimpsed a small figure darting between shadows in the hallway. The boy moved like a ghost, silent, quick, always keeping walls between himself and other people. She caught sight of him properly on her third morning, a beautiful child with his father's dark eyes and delicate features, wearing pajamas at noon and clutching a puzzle box like a shield. He watched her from behind a marble column as she folded towels in the main sitting room. Ariel had grown up with younger cousins who'd been through trauma. She recognized the hypervigilance, the way he positioned himself near exits, the careful distance he maintained from adults. So instead of approaching him or forcing interaction, she simply continued her work. But as she moved, she let her body fall into the rhythms she'd learned years ago in her hometown Taekwondo dojang. Centered breathing, grounded stances, controlled movements that spoke of inner strength. She didn't realize she was demonstrating a horse stance until she noticed the boy's reflection in the window, his small body unconsciously mirroring her posture. Their eyes met in the glass. Ariel turned slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hey there," she said softly. "That's called Yuchum Seogi. It means strong stance." The boy, Min-jun, she remembered, didn't speak, but he didn't run either. "Want to try it with me?" she asked, settling into the stance again. For a long moment, nothing. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, Min-jun stepped out from behind the column and spread his feet apart, his tiny hands curling into uncertain fists. Ariel's heart nearly broke at the sight, this small warrior trying so hard to be brave. "Perfect," she whispered. "Now breathe with me, in through your nose, out through your mouth." They stood there together in the golden afternoon light, breathing in unison, and Ariel felt something shift in the too-quiet house. Minjun's shoulders relaxed incrementally. His stance grew more confident. When footsteps echoed from the hallway, he vanished like smoke. But the next morning he was waiting for her in the courtyard. Ariel found him sitting cross-legged on the warm stone tiles, his puzzle box beside him, looking up at her with expectant eyes. Without a word, she set down her cleaning supplies and joined him on the ground. "Ready for lesson 2?" she asked. This time his nod was definite. She started with breathing exercises, then basic stances, keeping everything slow and gentle. Minjun absorbed every movement like a sponge, his natural grace evident even in his uncertainty. When she showed him how to make a proper fist, he studied her hands with intense concentration before copying the position exactly. "My grandmother taught me taekwondo when I was about your age," Ariel told him as they practiced. "She said it wasn't about fighting. It was about finding your center when the world feels shaky." Minjun's eyes widened slightly, the most expression she'd seen from him yet. "She sounds wise," came a deep voice from the doorway. Ariel's head snapped up to find Dae-Seong Han watching them, his expression unreadable. Minjun immediately shrank back, but he didn't run. "Mr. Han," Ariel began, scrambling to her feet. "I'm sorry. I should have asked permission." "No." His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't apologize." He looked at his son, something raw and vulnerable flickering across his features. "I haven't seen him this present in months." The weight of that admission hung in the air. Ariel glanced down at Minjun, who was watching his father with careful eyes. "Trauma affects everyone differently," she said carefully. "Sometimes movement helps process what words can't." Dae-Seong stepped closer, his gaze never leaving his son. "You know about trauma." "I know about healing," Ariel replied, "and I know that healing happens on its own timeline." Something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. Dae-Seong crouched down beside Minjun, his movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. "What do you think, Minjun?" he asked in Korean, then switched to English. "Would you like Miss Ariel to teach you more?" The boy looked between them, then gave the smallest nod. Dae-Seong's exhale was shaky with relief. "Then she will." As he stood to leave, he paused beside Ariel. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing him." After he was gone, Minjun tugged on Ariel's uniform skirt and pointed to the courtyard tiles. "Again?" she asked. His smile was tiny but real. Over the next 2 weeks, Ariel's mornings developed a rhythm that had nothing to do with housekeeping and everything to do with healing. Minjun would appear in the courtyard at exactly 9 a.m., sometimes still in pajamas, always carrying his puzzle box ready for their training sessions. She taught him basic forms, breathing techniques and simple meditation. But more importantly, she taught him that his body could be a source of strength instead of vulnerability. With each passing day, he stood a little taller, spoke a little more, flinched a little less at unexpected sounds. "Miss Ariel," he said one morning, the first time he'd used her name. "Can you teach me to be strong like my appa?" The question caught her off guard. She glanced toward the house where Dae-Seong often watched their sessions from his office window. "Your father is strong in many ways. But you know what makes someone truly strong?" Minjun shook his head. "Choosing kindness when you could choose anger. Choosing to help when you could choose to hurt. Choosing to trust when you're scared." She adjusted his stance gently. "That kind of strength is much harder than physical strength." "Is that why you help me, even though you're scared of Appa?" Ariel blinked in surprise. "What makes you think I'm scared of your father?" "Everyone is scared of him," Minjun said matter-of-factly. "But you still talk to him like he's just vampire people, out of the mouths of babes." Ariel realized the boy was right. She wasn't afraid of Dae-Seong Han, despite everything about him that should have terrified her. Maybe it was because she'd seen the way he looked at his son, like Minjun was the only thing in the world that mattered. Or maybe it was because underneath all that power and control, she recognized something familiar, a man trying desperately to protect what he loved. "Your father isn't scary to me," she said finally. "He's just someone who cares about you very much." That afternoon, as Ariel was cleaning the main sitting room, Dae-Seong appeared in the doorway. He'd traded his usual business suit for dark jeans and a white button-down, looking younger and somehow more dangerous. "Miss Monroe, could I speak with you?" She followed him to his office, a space that screamed wealth and power, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive mahogany desk, and windows overlooking the city sprawled below. But what caught her attention was the collection of photographs on his desk. Min-jun as a baby, Min-jun learning to walk, Min-jun laughing at something off-camera. "Please, sit," Dae-sung said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I wanted to discuss Min-jun's progress." "He's doing wonderfully," Ariel said. "His confidence is growing every day. The nightmares less frequent. He slept through the night twice this week." Dae-sung's relief was palpable. His therapist is amazed by the improvement. Children are resilient when they feel safe. Yes, about that. Dae-sung leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on her. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Ariel's pulse quickened. "Of course. Do you know who I am? What I do?" The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Ariel had suspected from the beginning. The security, the deference of his staff, the way he carried himself like a man accustomed to absolute authority. She'd done her research after the first week, finding newspaper articles that danced around the truth but painted a clear picture. "I know you're a businessman with interests that probably don't involve filing taxes," she said carefully. A smile ghosted across his lips. "Diplomatic. I also know that you love your son more than anything else in the world, and that's all that matters to me." Something shifted in Dae-sung's expression, surprise maybe, or something deeper. "Most people would run. I'm not most people." "No," he said quietly. "You're not." The silence stretched between them, charged with an undercurrent Ariel didn't want to examine too closely. Dae-sung Han was dangerous in more ways than one, and she was beginning to realize that the threat he posed to her peace of mind had nothing to do with his criminal connections. "There's something else," he said, his voice lower now. "I'm increasing your salary significantly." "Mr. Han, that's not necessary." "It is." His tone brooked no argument. "What you're doing for Min-jun, it's priceless, but I also want you to understand that working for me comes with certain risks. If you choose to stay, I need to know you're committed." "Risks?" "I have enemies, Miss Monroe. People who would use anyone close to me or my son to cause harm. I can protect you, but I need your word that you won't abandon him if things become complicated." Ariel thought of Min-jun's small hand in hers, the way his face lit up when he mastered a new technique, the trust he'd placed in her, despite every reason to be afraid of adults. "You have my word," she said without hesitation. Relief flooded Dae-sung's features. "Thank you." As she stood to leave, he called her name. "Ariel." The sound of her first name in his accented voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Yes? What you said about strength, choosing kindness over anger. Where did you learn that?" "From my grandmother. She raised me after my parents died. She used to say that anyone can destroy, but it takes real courage to build something beautiful." Dae-sung was quiet for a long moment. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. She would have loved Min-jun. "I think," Dae-sung said softly, "she would have loved you too." That evening, as Ariel prepared to leave for the day, she found Min-jun waiting by the front door with a piece of paper in his hands. "I drew this for you," he said shyly, holding out a crayon drawing of two stick figures in taekwondo uniforms. One was clearly meant to be her, with carefully colored brown skin and black hair. The other was himself, small but standing proud beside her. "It's beautiful," Ariel said, her throat tight with emotion. "Can I keep it?" His nod was enthusiastic. "Appa says you're going to stay with us for a long time, as long as you want me to." "Forever." The innocent question hit her like a physical blow. Forever. As if it were that simple. As if the growing feelings she was developing for both the boy and his father could ever lead to something permanent. "We'll see," she said gently. "But I'm not going anywhere anytime soon." As she drove home to her small apartment, Ariel tried to ignore the voice in her head, warning her that she was getting too attached, too invested in a situation that could only end in heartbreak. But when she looked at Min-jun's drawing on her passenger seat, she realized it was already too late. She was falling in love with both of them. 3 weeks into their routine, everything changed on a Tuesday morning when Minjun didn't appear for their training session. Ariel waited in the courtyard for 20 minutes before venturing into the house to look for him. She found him in his bedroom, curled up in his closet with his puzzle box trembling. "Hey, little warrior," she said softly, crouching down outside the closet. "What's wrong?" "Bad dreams came back," he whispered. "The scary men. They were here again." Ariel's heart clenched. "Oh, sweetheart, it was just a dream. You're safe. But what if they come back for real? What if they hurt you too?" The fear in his voice broke something inside her. She held out her hand. "Can I sit with you?" Minjun nodded, scooting over to make room in the small space. Ariel squeezed into the closet beside him, wrapping her arms around his small body. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "Your father would never let anyone hurt you, and neither would I." "But you're just a maid," Minjun said, not unkindly. "The scary men have guns." Ariel was quiet for a moment, weighing her words carefully. "Can I tell you a secret?" He nodded against her shoulder. "I wasn't always a maid. Before I came here, I was a security guard. I know how to protect people." It wasn't entirely true. She'd worked mall security for 6 months in Atlanta, but the confidence in her voice seemed to calm him. "Really?" "Really. And your father? He's much stronger than any scary man. He's like a superhero, but in expensive suits." That earned her a small giggle. "Appa does look like a superhero." They sat together until Minjun's breathing evened out, then moved to the courtyard for a modified training session focused on calming techniques and confidence-building exercises. Daesung found them there an hour later, his face tight with concern. Mrs. Kim said Minjun had a difficult morning. "We worked through it," Ariel said, watching Minjun practice his forms with renewed determination. "But he's worried about his safety, and mine." Something dark flashed in Daesung's eyes. "Has something happened? Any threats?" "No, just residual trauma from the break-in, but maybe it would help if he understood that he's protected, that we all are." Daesung was quiet for a long moment, watching his son. "Would you be comfortable meeting some of my security team? It might reassure him to see that there are good people watching over him." "Of course." That afternoon, Daesung introduced them to Junhyuk Seo, his head of security, a quiet, serious man who spoke to Minjun with gentle respect and showed him the discreet security measures throughout the house. By evening, Minjun was back to his normal self, even asking Junhyuk to watch him demonstrate his taekwondo forms. But the incident had shaken something loose in Ariel. As she prepared to leave that evening, she found herself in Daesung's office again. "Thank you," she said, "for handling that so well, for understanding what he needed. Thank you for being there when he was scared, for knowing how to comfort him." Daesung looked exhausted, the weight of constant vigilance etched in the lines around his eyes. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing him, like I don't know how to be both his protector and his father." "You're not failing him," Ariel said firmly. "You're doing everything you can to keep him safe while still letting him be a child. That's not easy. It's not enough." "It is enough. You are enough." The words came out more forcefully than she'd intended, and Daesung's eyes snapped to hers in surprise. "Minjun adores you. Yes, he's been through trauma, but he's healing because he feels loved and secure. That's because of you." "And you," Daesung said quietly. "He's healing because of you." The air between them seemed to thicken. Ariel became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the way Daesung was looking at her like she was something precious and unexpected. "Ariel," he said, her name a whisper. Before she could respond, the office door burst open. Junhyuk entered quickly, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem. The Yamamoto family is making moves on the docks. They want a meeting." The moment shattered. Daesung's expression hardened back into the mask of cold authority, and Ariel felt the loss of his vulnerability like a physical ache. "When?" Daesung asked. "Tomorrow night. They're insisting on neutral ground. Set it up." Daesung glanced at Ariel. "I'm sorry, we'll have to continue this conversation later." She nodded and moved toward the door, but Daesung's voice stopped her. "Ariel, be extra careful tomorrow. Stay close to the house." The warning sent a chill down her spine, but she nodded again and left them to their planning. The next day passed in tense quiet. Daesung was gone by the time Ariel arrived, and the usual staff seemed on edge. Even Minjun picked up on the atmosphere, staying closer to her than usual during their training. "Is Appa in trouble?" he asked as they practiced breathing exercises. "Your father can handle anything," Ariel assured him, hoping it was true. That evening, as she was preparing to leave, Mrs. Kim approached her with worry creased across her features. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Han asked me to give you this." She handed Ariel a sealed envelope. "He said to read it when you got home." Ariel's hands shook slightly as she opened the letter in her car. "Ariel, if you're reading this, it means tonight didn't go as planned. I need you to know that whatever happens, Minjun's safety is my priority. There are instructions in my safe for his care, and enough money to ensure his future. The combination is his birthday. I also need you to know that these past weeks have been the happiest I've seen him since his mother died. That's because of you. You gave him back his childhood, his confidence, his smile. You gave me back my son. I wish I could have given you more time. I wish I could have told you how much you've come to mean to both of us. Protect him. Love him. Help him remember that his father tried to be worthy of him." Daesung Ariel's blood turned to ice. She grabbed her phone and called the house, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried Jun Hyuk's number. The same. Without thinking, she turned her car around and raced back to the mansion, her heart pounding with terror. She had to get to Minjun. She had to make sure he was safe. But as she pulled up to the gates, she saw something that made her slam on the brakes. Daesung's car in the driveway. He was home. He was alive. And she was about to do something very, very stupid. Ariel burst through the front door without knocking, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found Daesung in his office, very much alive but sporting a cut on his cheekbone and blood on his white shirt. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, waving his letter. He looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his features. "You came back." "Of course I came back. You wrote me a goodbye letter like you were going off to die." Her voice cracked with emotion she couldn't contain. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? What it would have done to Minjun?" Daesung stood slowly, his dark eyes fixed on her face. "You weren't supposed to read it unless... Unless what? Unless you got yourself killed playing gangster." Tears she didn't realize she'd been holding back spilled down her cheeks. "I thought you were dead. I thought Minjun was going to wake up tomorrow and find out his father was never coming home." "Ariel, no, you don't get to Ariel me right now." She was shaking with fury and relief, and something deeper that she didn't want to name. "You don't get to make me care about you and then throw your life away like it doesn't matter." "It doesn't matter," Daesung said quietly. "Not compared to his safety. It matters to him, it matters to—" She stopped herself before she could finish the sentence, but the words hung in the air anyway. "It matters to me." Daesung moved closer, his gaze intense. "To who, Ariel? Who else does it matter to?" She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "I should check on Minjun. He's asleep. Mrs. Kim is with him." Daesung's hand touched her shoulder gently. "Answer me." "You know the answer," she whispered. "I need to hear you say it." Ariel spun around to face him, her composure finally cracking completely. "It matters to me, okay? You matter to me. Both of you. And I know that's stupid and inappropriate and completely unprofessional, but I can't help it. I love that little boy like he's my own. And I—" She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "And you what?" Daesung's voice was barely audible. "And I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Which is insane because you're my boss, and you're dangerous and this whole situation is impossible, but there it is. So yes, your life matters. It matters so much that the thought of losing you made me physically sick." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Daesung reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You beautiful, impossible woman," he murmured. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" Before she could respond, his lips were on hers, and the kiss was everything she'd been trying not to imagine, desperate and tender and full of months of suppressed longing. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his blood-stained shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, his mouth on hers, his arms around her, the feeling of finally coming home. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Daesung rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. I've been falling in love with you since the day I saw you teaching my son to be brave. But I can't ask you to stay in this life. I can't ask you to accept the danger that comes with being mine." "You're not asking," Ariel said firmly. "I'm choosing. I'm choosing you and him and whatever comes with that." "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly." She pulled back to look at him directly. "I understand that you're a man who would die to protect his son. I understand that you're trying to build something better for him. I understand that you're not the monster people think you are. And I understand that I'd rather face whatever dangers come with loving you than live without you." Daeseong's control finally cracked. He kissed her again, harder this time, pouring everything he couldn't say into the connection between them. When they separated, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "There's something else," he said roughly. "Something you need to know before you make this choice." Ariel's stomach dropped. "What?" "The meeting tonight, it wasn't just about territory. The Yamamoto family has been investigating me. They know about Min-jun and they know about you. They made it clear that if I don't back down from the docks, they'll target the people I care about." The blood drained from Ariel's face. "They threatened Min-jun. They threatened both of you." Daesung's jaw was tight with barely controlled rage. "I told them that would be a mistake. But this is what I mean about the danger. Being with me makes you a target." "So what do we do?" "We?" Daesung looked surprised. "Yes, we. You're not handling this alone anymore." Ariel's voice was steel. "What are our options?" Daesung stared at her for a long moment, something like wonder crossing his features. "I could eliminate the threat permanently. It would send a message to anyone else who might consider targeting my family. Or I could step back, hand over control of my organization to Jun Hyuk, and focus on legitimate business interests. It would mean less power, less money, but more safety for both of you." Ariel was quiet, processing. "What does your heart tell you to do?" "My heart tells me to burn down anyone who dares threaten you or Min-jun. But my head tells me that Min-jun deserves a father who doesn't have blood on his hands." "Then we step back," Ariel said without hesitation. "We choose the path that lets Min-jun grow up with his father alive and present. You'd give up the wealth, the security. I never wanted those things anyway. I wanted you, both of you. Everything else is just details." Daesung pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "So what do you choose, Daesung-han?" "I choose you," he said without hesitation. "I choose us. I choose the chance to be the man Min-jun thinks I am. And I choose you too, all of you, even the dangerous parts." They held each other in the quiet of his office, both understanding that they were crossing a line they could never uncross. But for the first time in months, the future felt possible instead of terrifying. "There's one more thing," Daesung said eventually. "What now?" Ariel asked with a shaky laugh. "Min-jun has been asking me when you're going to move in permanently. Apparently he's decided you belong here." "Smart kid. The smartest. So what do you say? Ready to make this official?" Ariel thought of her small apartment, her quiet life, the safe path she'd been walking before she met them. Then she thought of Min-jun's smile, of morning training sessions in the courtyard, of the way Daesung looked at her like she was his salvation. "I say yes," she whispered, "to all of it." And as Daesung kissed her again, Ariel realized that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the most right one. Months later, the transformation was complete. Daesung had kept his word, stepping back from the darker aspects of his business and focusing on legitimate ventures. The transition hadn't been easy. There were challenges from within his organization, threats from rivals who saw his retreat as weakness, and financial adjustments that required careful planning. But with Jun Hyuk managing security and Ariel by his side, he'd navigated it all. The Yamamoto threat had been neutralized through strategic negotiations rather than violence, and the message had been clear. Daesung-han was no longer playing the same game, but it was the changes in Min-jun that truly marked their success. The boy who had once hidden in closets now ran through the house with confidence. He laughed freely, asked endless questions, and had even made friends at his new school. His nightmares had faded to occasional bad dreams that were easily soothed by either parent, because that's what Ariel had become, a parent. Not officially, not yet, but in every way that mattered. She'd moved into the mansion 3 months ago, taking the suite next to Min-jun's room. and the three of them had fallen into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Morning taekwondo sessions had evolved into family training time, with Dae-seong joining them when his schedule allowed. Evenings were spent with homework help, puzzle building, and story time. Weekends meant trips to museums, beaches, and the Korean Cultural Center, where Min-jun was learning about his heritage. It was during one of these weekend outings that everything came together. They were at the annual Korean festival in downtown LA, Min-jun wearing his white taekwondo dobok and beaming with pride as he prepared for his first public demonstration. Ariel had been working with him for weeks, and Dae-seong had arranged for Grandmaster Hwan Lee, a respected elder in the Korean martial arts community, to evaluate his progress. "Are you nervous?" Ariel asked Min-jun as they waited in the staging area. "A little," he admitted. "But Halmione always said that being nervous means you care about doing well." Ariel's heart swelled. Min-jun had started calling her grandmother Halmione after learning about Korean family terms, and the honor of that title never failed to move her. "Your Halmione was very wise," Dae-seong said, crouching down to adjust Min-jun's belt. "She would be so proud of how strong and brave you've become. She would be proud of all of us," Min-jun said matter-of-factly. "We're a real family now." The simple statement hit both adults like a physical blow. Dae-seong's eyes met Ariel's over their son's head, and she saw her own overwhelming love reflected back at her. "Yes," Dae-seong said quietly. "We are." When it was time for the demonstration, Min-jun took the stage with confidence that would have been unimaginable a year ago. He moved through his forms with precision and grace, his small voice calling out the Korean commands Ariel had taught him. "Juchum Seogi," he announced, settling into the horse stance that had started it all. The crowd applauded, but Ariel only had eyes for Dae-seong's face. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he watched his son, their son, demonstrate not just physical skill but emotional healing. After the demonstration, Grandmaster Lee approached them with approval shining in his ancient eyes. "This boy has exceptional natural ability," he told them in accented English, "but more than that, he has the spirit of a true martial artist. Whoever has been teaching him has done so with great love and wisdom." "That would be his Umma," Dae-seong said, his hand finding Ariel's. The word, Korean for mother, sent a shock through Ariel's system. She looked at Dae-seong in surprise, but he was smiling at her with such tenderness that her knees nearly buckled. "His Umma is very special," Grandmaster Lee agreed, bowing slightly to Ariel. "You have raised a fine young warrior." As they walked back to the car, Min-jun between them and chattering excitedly about the other demonstrations they'd seen, Ariel felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. "Umma?" she asked Dae-seong quietly. "If you want to be," he said, "officially." "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Dae-seong stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Ariel Monroe, you saved my son's life. You saved mine. You made us a family when I thought we were broken beyond repair." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me? Will you be Min-jun's Umma and my wife, officially and forever?" Ariel's hands flew to her mouth as he dropped to one knee right there on the busy sidewalk. Min-jun gasped in delight, immediately understanding what was happening. "Say yes, Ariel," he urged. "Say yes so we can be a real family." "We already are a real family," she said through her tears, "but yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it." Dae-seong slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning solitaire that caught the afternoon light, and stood to kiss her as Min-jun cheered and passers-by applauded. "I love you," Dae-seong murmured against her lips. "Both of you. More than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," she whispered back, "my dangerous, beautiful, impossible men." As they drove home, Min-jun, chattering about wedding plans and whether he could wear his taekwondo uniform to the ceremony, Ariel marveled at the journey that had brought them here. She'd come to Los Angeles looking for a fresh start and found something infinitely better, a love that had transformed them all. "Umma," Min-jun said from the back seat, testing out the word. "Will you teach me more taekwondo after we get married?" "Every day if you want," she promised. "And will you teach Appa too? He needs to learn the forms properly." Dae-seong laughed. "Your Umma has been trying to teach me for months. I'm a slow student." That's okay, Minjun said generously. Love makes people patient. From the mouths of babes. That evening, as they sat together in the courtyard where it all began, watching Minjun practice his forms in the golden sunset light, Daeshong pulled Ariel close. No regrets? He asked. Only one, she said, and his face fell slightly. I regret that my grandmother never got to meet you both. She would have loved you. She did meet us, Daeshong said softly. She's in every lesson you teach him, every moment of patience you show, every ounce of love you give. She's here. Ariel leaned into his warmth, watching their son, because Minjun was theirs now. Completely and forever, demonstrate the strength and confidence they'd helped him find. You know what the best part is? She said. What? This is just the beginning. And as Minjun called out, Appa, Uma, watch this, before launching into his most advanced form, Ariel knew she was right. They were just getting started. Years had passed since that first morning, when Ariel found a broken little boy hiding behind marble columns. The mansion still stood proud in the Hollywood Hills, but it felt completely different now, filled with laughter instead of silence, warmth instead of cold authority. Minjun, now 12 and already showing signs of his father's height, had just earned his black belt in Taekwondo. The ceremony had been held in their own courtyard, with Grandmaster Lee presiding and extended family, both Korean and American, gathered to celebrate. I couldn't have done it without my Uma, Minjun had said in his speech, his voice clear and confident. She taught me that real strength comes from here. He'd pointed to his heart, not here, pointing to his muscles. Ariel had cried. Of course. She'd been crying happy tears a lot lately, especially since the morning sickness had started. Are you going to tell him today? Daesong asked as they cleaned up after the celebration. Their guests had gone home. Minjun was at a sleepover with his best friend, and they finally had a moment alone. Tell him what? Ariel asked innocently, though her hand unconsciously moved to her still flat stomach. That he's going to be a big brother, Ariel grinned. I thought we could tell him together, make it a family announcement. He's going to be over the moon. He's been asking for a sibling for 2 years. Think he'll want to teach the baby Taekwondo? I think he'll want to teach the baby everything. Daesong pulled her into his arms, his hands settling over hers on her stomach, just like his Uma taught him. They stood together in the courtyard where their love story had begun, surrounded by the echoes of all the mornings they'd spent here, first healing a traumatized child, then building a family, now preparing to expand it. Any regrets? Daesong asked, their old ritual. Only that it took us so long to get here, Ariel replied, then paused. Actually, no, we got here exactly when we were supposed to, when Minjun needed us to. When we all needed each other. As if summoned by their conversation, Minjun's voice called out from the front door. Uma, Appa, I forgot my overnight bag. They laughed, breaking apart as their son bounded into the courtyard, still wearing his new black belt with obvious pride. Did you forget something else? Ariel asked, raising an eyebrow. Minjun grinned and ran over to hug them both. I love you, he said simply. Thank you for making me strong. You made yourself strong, little warrior, Ariel said, ruffling his hair. We just helped you remember it was there all along. As Minjun grabbed his bag and headed back out to his friend's car, he paused at the doorway. Hey, when I come home tomorrow, can we have family training time? I want to show you the new form Grandmaster Lee taught me. Wouldn't miss it, Daesong called back. When they were alone again, Ariel looked around the courtyard, at the stone tiles where a frightened little boy had first found his courage, at the space where a powerful man had learned to choose love over fear, at the place where a woman searching for purpose had found her calling. Ready for the next adventure? Daesong asked. Ariel smiled, thinking of the baby growing inside her, of Minjun's excitement, when he learned he'd be a big brother, of all the morning training sessions and family dinners and bedtime stories still to come. With you too? I'm ready for anything. And in the golden light of their courtyard, surrounded by the love they'd built together, Ariel knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them the way they'd faced everything else, together as a family, with the strength that comes from choosing love over fear. The Warrior's Way. Thank you for staying until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has many more captivating stories. Hit subscribe because with your help, we keep creating these emotional journeys.